It is a new era in Bloomington, Indiana. Tom Allen is out. Kurt Signetti is in. The former FCS National Championship winning head coach has come over from James Madison to take over this Indiana program and move them in the right direction. And this is an Indiana team that brings in a ton of transfers, and Kurt Signetti's completely overhauled this program. Now entering a much tougher division to play in the Big Ten Conference. Can Kurt Signetti take this Indiana team to be a Big Ten surprise in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season. If you haven't watched any of my videos before, well, I'm predicting all 134 teams in the FBS ranks of college football this summer, which means I'm doing your favorite team. That means you got to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Whether you're a Hoosier fan or not, it does help support my channel, and you can help support my channel in more ways than just that. You can like, you can comment, you can share, watch my other videos, of course, subscribing. Literally anything you do to interact with the channel helps support what I do here on YouTube. I greatly appreciate all of it. And let's dive on into talking about Kurt Signetti's new team. The Indiana Hoosiers, they could be really fun and interesting this year. Hey, how do we talk about teams this offseason? Well, we're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the video, we will dive on in to the Hoosiers football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. But a couple more things before we start, because right over here are the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And, of course, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I put the team's coaching staff. Again, it's going to look like a completely overhauled Indiana team this year. And without further ado, let's start talking about it. This is an Indiana team overall, offensively, defensively, that just struggled under Tom Allen last season. And it did lose a lot of talent, a lot of it gone through the portal. There is some NFL talent, some guys graduating. We'll talk about all of it, but it's going to be a completely overhauled quarterback room for the most part, because you do lose a lot of guys that had a lot of playing time for this Indiana team last season that are now gone through the transfer portal. Brendan Sorsby has gone over to Cincinnati. Brock Lowry has gone over to Western Michigan, and Dexter Williams has gone over to Georgia Southern. Sorsby last year was sort of the leading quarterback here for this team, kind of split time with Taven Jackson, who, as you see, does come back. I'll read both of their stat lines right now. Brendan Sorsby had 1,587 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 5 picks. I mean, hey, he was a pretty solid quarterback for this team. Taven Jackson had 914 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5 picks. So again, that touchdown-interception ratio, not too great. Taven Jackson was going to be the starter entering this season until Indiana dove into the transfer portal and nabbed Nathan Rourke from OU. No, not Oklahoma. I'm talking about Ohio University. And if you don't know the name Curtis Rourke, well, he's been a really good quarterback for this Bobcat team. I believe that was coming off of an injury from last season, which is really going to hurt him. We'll see how he comes back from that. But you go back to what he did in 2022. 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, 4 picks, had 249 rushing yards on the ground. And look, before injury was not bad last season at all. 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 219 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 2,200 yards passing. You're getting a very good player in Curtis Rourke to come over and play quarterback. Kurt Signetti's old quarterback and Jordan McLeod ended up going over to Texas State. So we had to go elsewhere for a starting quarterback. You get Curtis Rourke, and I think that's a great pickup through the transfer portal. And I do think he's going to fit in to this Kurt Signetti system really, really well. I think you got yourself a really good player there in Curtis Rourke from the transfer portal. There you go, if I could say it right. Running back room, you do lose a couple pieces here through the transfer portal, and Jalen Lucas, who was the team's leading, was not the team's leading rusher, but was a solid piece in this running back room last season. The leading rusher was Trent Howland for this team last year. Howland had 354 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lucas had 275 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Sorsby at quarterback was the team's 3rd leading rusher, and you lose Josh Henderson due to graduation. He was the team's 2nd leading rusher last season. So what does that mean for this running back room? I also do believe that Christian Turner, yes, Christian Turner, he is not on this board. He should be, though. He had 227 yards, 2 touchdowns for the team last year. He is also gone due to graduation. So you do lose Chris Turner there as well. Christian Turner. My apologies. So it's going to be a completely overhauled running back room for the Indiana Hoosiers this year. They bring in a lot of guys through the transfer portal. Kalen Black and Tyson Lawton are both following Kurt Cignetti over from James Madison. Justin Ellison is coming over from Wake Forest. Justice Ellison, my apologies, coming over from Wake Forest. And Elijah Green is coming over from North Carolina. All of them are very talented in their own right, and you're going to see pretty much all four of them used here. At least I believe Ellison will be the lead back there. Obviously, Cignetti's going to roll with his guys, Black and Lawton there as well. Elijah Green could play a pretty big part, but you have a lot of talent in this running back room. Wide receiver room, well, you do lose Deuce Carter, who was gone to the NFL. He had 395 yards and 3 touchdowns on 27 catches last season, so losing him is big, and you do lose Cam Camper, gone through the portal. High upside wide receiver with 17 catches, 285 yards, and a touchdown. He has found a new home with a different program. You do lose a lot of tight ends as well, as Bradley Archer is gone due to graduation. He had 6 receptions last year, and Anthony Miller is off this team as well. Didn't have a catch last season, but is a loss from the tight end room nonetheless. So when you talk about this receiving room here for the Indiana Hoosiers, well, Donovan McCulley, I believe a converted quarterback, is coming back to be the team's leading wide receiver. 644 yards, 6 touchdowns for him last season. E.J. Williams and Omar Cooper do come back as well. Both of them had over 200 yards receiving last season and at least 18 catches. So you do have a lot of talent coming back in this wide receiver room. But much like the running back room, you bring in a ton of guys through the transfer portal, including Elijah Surratt, who probably will end up being that leading receiver for the team this season, as Surratt was a 1,000-yard receiver over with Kurt Cignetti's old program in James Madison. You get Miles Cross, who's going to be pairing with his old quarterback Curtis Rourke. He's coming over from Ohio. Miles Price is coming over from Texas Tech, and Keyshawn Williams is over from Wake Forest. So a ton of talent coming into this wide receiver room that I really, really like for the Indiana Hoosiers, while Trey Walker and James Bamba come back at tight end, and Zach Horton is another transfer that enters this program. He is a transfer, again, coming over from James Madison at the tight end position. So you get a very talented player coming in right there. On the offensive line, you do lose a lot of starters from last year, and you just lose a lot of guys on the 2 deep from this offensive line group last season. Zach Carpenter, Matthew Bedford, Khalil Benson, and Joshua Sales Jr. all gone through the transfer portal. So who does come back? Carter Smith, Mike Caddick, Bray Lynch, and Cooper Jones are all names that come back, but all 3 of the very notable names that come in through the transfer portal, well, you could see starting on the offensive line, including Nick Kidwell, who was a great offensive line at James Madison, will likely get a starting role. Trey Wettig comes over to this program as well. And Tyler Stevens, Wettig over from Wisconsin, Stevens also coming over from James Madison. Again, a completely overhauled offensive unit. It's going to look nothing like it did last season. I think Curtis Rourke is going to be I don't know why I can't say names right today. Curtis Rourke is going to be a good quarterback for this team. I think they're going to be able to utilize Ellison, Black, and all these other running backs. They brought him through the portal really, really nicely. Getting that talent in at the wide receiver room is huge. The offensive line, I think, is going to be much better. And this is an Indiana offense. Look, it's going to surprise some people here in 2024. They got a lot of really, really nice talent coming in, and I'm excited to watch the Indiana offense in 2024. Again, I think Curtis Rourke going to be a good quarterback. They got a lot of very nice skill position players here. I think it can definitely challenge and make a lot of these Big Ten, these really good Big Ten defensive teams think. But speaking of defensive teams, Indiana, a little bit of a better defense than I think people might expect, at least when you take a look at the stats from last season. But they do lose a ton of talent through the transfer portal, some gone to the NFL, including Andre Carter on the defensive line. He was really, really good, and Aaron Casey in the linebacker room. Both of those guys, you could probably argue, the 2 best defensive players on this team. Aaron Casey had 109 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 3 pass defended. He was really, really good. And Andre Carter, 49 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 pass defended. Both of them, obviously, top 5 tacklers for the team last season. But they lose much more than that off the defensive front 7 because Aaron Casey, I believe his brother Jared, has entered the transfer portal. I don't believe he's found a home yet, but is looking for one. He is still in that portal cycle. Philip Bliddy, Anthony Jones, Miles Jackson, Ladarius Cox, and Patrick Lucas, a ton of big contributors on the defensive line, gone off this Indiana defense from last season. Whew. Those are a lot of really, really important names, this Indiana defense last year. But again, this is the team that is trying to build, at least as of right now, through the transfer portal, and Kurt Cignetti is going to get recruiting coming up really soon. Marcus Burris, Vincent Sneed, Robbie Harrison are coming back on this defensive line, while you get Mikhail Kamara, CJ West, James Carpenter, and Tyreek Tucker all coming in through the transfer portal in the defensive line room. Linebacker room, Jacob Magnum Farrar, who was the team's third leading tackler last season. Linnell Carr, who had 5 sacks last year. That was second on the team, again, only behind that of Aaron Casey and Joshua Rudolph come back to the linebacker room, while you do get 2 James Madison transfers coming in to the linebacker room, and Jalen Walker and Aiden Fisher. They were very important pieces for Curt Cignetti's defense last season. They will be here at Indiana. You also do get a Troy transfer in Jaden McDonald, and we know the type of defense that John Summerall played with. He could see some good playing time in the linebacker room as well. Defensive front 7, yes, it looks new. It is going to be overhauled, but a lot of really good pieces come in through the transfer portal to pair with some pieces that are already there. Now, I feel like a lot of these pieces in the transfer portal are going to do more of the heavy lifting, and again, it just depends on how they all gel within this Curt Cignetti system. But there is a lot of talent on this defensive front 7. And then in the defensive backfield, well, let's talk about all that they lose. Jordan Shaw and Kobe Minor are 2 cornerbacks that are going to be gone from this team. Minor had 29 tackles with 4 passes defended last season, and Jordan Shaw only 12 tackles, half a sack, and a pass defended for him last season, but he could be a high upside player where he is transferring over to. I will find that for you right now, which is the Arizona Wildcats. He could be a pretty good corner over for Brent Brennan's new group in the safety position. A lot of more guys gone through the portal. Lewis Moore, Philip Dunham, and Jordan Greer are all gone through the transfer portal, while Noah Pierre is gone due to graduation. Moore was the team's second leading tackler last season, was tied for the team lead with 3 picks. You also did have Dunham tied for the team lead with 3 picks. There should be an extra N in there, 1 second. Okay, again, apologies for that. So he is gone, and then Jordan Greer last year, very important piece of this defensive backfield as well, had 23 tackles. And then again, Noah Pierre gone due to graduation. He had 22 tackles, 2 passes defended for the team last season. So your defensive back room, what does it look like in 2024? Well, Jamari Sharp, JoJo Johnson, and Jameer Johnson all come back, while you do get D'Angelo Pons, again, a James Madison transfer, coming over through the transfer portal. Nick Toomer, Joshua Sanguinetti, Amari Farrell, and Bryson Barnes all come back in the safety position, while Terry Jones Jr. and Sean Asbury come in through the portal. And then, hey, kickers are people too, so we got to show them some love. You lose Chris Freeman, who was the team's primary place kicker last year, missed 1 extra point and made 10 out of his 14 field goal attempts last season. So he is gone. They had the dive in the portal to get Derek McCormick, who should be the primary place kicker for the Hoosiers, but the punter, James Evans, does come back. Defensively, it is all about how these transfers mesh within the new system. It's all about how the returners fit in with this new system. Again, there's going to be a lot of changes both offensively and defensively for this Indiana Hoosier program, but I like a lot of the talent they're bringing back. I like a lot of the transfers that they are bringing in. However, it is going to be a really, really tough road, though, because this Indiana football schedule is not kind to them. There are a lot of tough games here, but a lot of winnable games, and the Hoosiers, well, they could be a sneaky team to make a bowl game. Let's find out what I think right now. Any game at home will be underlined, and any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Hoosiers are going to win pretty easily. Any game in yellow is going to be a close competitive game, but a game that the Hoosiers are going to win nonetheless. And any game in red is a loss. And I think you start out with 2 wins right out of the gate against FIU, who just not normally one of the better FBS teams. At least that's how it's been as of late. I don't really expect that to change here in 2024. I still think FIU, they have some solid talent there. And hey, again, if everything doesn't gel with this Curt Cignetti program, Indiana could be in for an early scare, but I really, really don't see it. I think FIU is going to go down, and then they should be able to beat Western Illinois, the Leathernecks, in week 2. That's a Friday game. So 2 easy wins for me, for the Indiana Hoosiers to start off this campaign, sort of get all the transfers into the system, put everyone where they need to be, etc., etc. Okay, then you get to play the UCLA Bruins, and I think this is going to be a loss for you. Look, I've been on record saying that I just don't think UCLA is going to be that great this year. I really, really don't. I think they got a lot of pieces that just need to fall in place, right? There's a lot of pieces offensively that I have question marks about, as you do lose Dante Moore. You do lose Carson Steele. You lose a lot of other talent. You lose some talent defensively. You do lose DeAnton Lynn, your defensive coordinator. You lose Chip Kelly, your head coach, and you're entering a new conference in the Big Ten. I think UCLA is going to be in turmoil this year, and that, to me, is a loss for the UCLA Bruins. Sorry, I mean a loss to the UCLA Bruins, but I do have you being able to win your next game here against the Charlotte 49ers. Non-conference play, very, very kind to the Indiana Hoosiers this year, as you get two teams that are probably going to end up sitting towards the bottom of their respective conferences in FIU and Charlotte, and an FCS level program in Western Illinois. Again, Biff Poggy's group could be a little bit better than it was in 2024. I definitely could see that. I definitely think Charlotte's a team that has potential, but I do not think they will be beating the Indiana Hoosiers, as, hey, the Curt Cignetti era is starting out really, really well, and I think that momentum carries into their second game of Big Ten Conference play, so the first Big Ten win under Curt Cignetti will be against the Maryland Terrapins. That defense was pretty good last season. However, it usually is a question mark for Maryland, especially as we get past September. Now this game is in September, and it's a winnable game for the Maryland Terrapins. If the trend continues, Maryland plays really well in September, this could be a game that Maryland does lose, or I'd say a game that Maryland does win. But it is a game that I ultimately see Maryland losing. Again, I like a lot of this talent that Indiana has offensively. Maryland's got a lot of holes to fill defensively, and most importantly, offensively. Talia Tagovailoa is gone. A lot of their other playmakers are gone. You do get MJ Morris coming in, and there's not a world where I don't see him being that starting quarterback for that team. So Maryland's one of the interesting teams in the Big Ten Conference this year. It's a team that has some good pieces coming in through the portal. A lot of the talent I do like, but I do think Indiana's going to be able to win this one out here, because I think Curt Cignetti's group is going to be really, really competitive this season. However, this 6-game stretch for Indiana, hey, you just got to win one, and your most winnable game probably comes at this point right here against the Northwestern Wildcats in Week 6 on the road. And, well, while it is on the road, Northwestern doesn't really have Evans Field to play in this season. They're doing construction on it. They're going to have a weird lakeside thing. Maybe 15,000 people get to watch football games for Northwestern this season. It's going to be a really weird situation. And Ryan Braun, again, while he doesn't have the most talented group in the Big Ten Conference, look at the job that he did with that team last season. While I don't think Northwestern is going to reach 8-5 type heights this season, I do still like a lot of that talent on the team. And again, Curt Cignetti, I think, is going to end up having his struggles. Really, really good head coach that I think will get this Indiana program moving in the right direction. But I think this game right here, Ryan Braun did it last year. I think at points it'll continue this year, and Northwestern is a hard team to play. They usually are feisty and competitive. I think that's going to be a loss for the Indiana Hoosiers. Again, this entire front half of the schedule, I could see Indiana going 6-0. I really, really could. Again, UCLA is in turmoil. Northwestern is not the most talented team within the Big Ten Conference, but I think they lose both of those, and then the gauntlet really begins, because it's going to be really hard to win even one of these games out of your next 5. I think you lose to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Dylan Raiola is coming in. He's going to be a really, really talented quarterback. You have some really good defensive players and one of the best defensive staffs in the entire country. Your wide receiver room is loaded up through transfers. Matt Rule in year 2, we know how he builds programs. He builds them really, really well. Nebraska is going to be a really good team this season. They will be much, much better than they have in the past. And the Cornhuskers beat the Hoosiers in Memorial Stadium, no, not in Lincoln, in Bloomington. And I think Washington picks up a road win here as well. Now, I know everyone off that team is gone. Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, Dylan Johnson, lots of defensive pieces. Oh, yeah, and their head coach, Kalen DeBoer, did go over to coach the Alabama Crimson Tide. Still a lot of talent on this Washington team. I mean, you got Will Rogers, who I think is going to give this Indiana secondary hell. And I really do like a lot of the pieces that Washington has here on this team. Jed Fish coming in to coach, and while he'll see his struggles in Big Ten play, Washington's still going to be a competitive team at the very least this season, and they are much better than Indiana, at least in my opinion, as it currently stands right now. So Washington does win that game. You got to go on the road to play the Michigan State Spartans, and I think that one's going to be a loss for you there as well. Michigan State is bringing in Jonathan Smith to be head coach. Aiden Childs is following him. If he is the quarterback that everyone says he's going to be, well, that's just gonna play into Michigan State's favor. Still a lot of really good defensive pieces. And while Jonathan Smith might need time to flip that culture around there in East Lansing, that should still be a win for the Michigan State Spartans. And then I don't think Indiana's going to win either of their next 2 games. You'll lose to Michigan, the national champs from last season. And look, even though I don't love that quarterback room, you can't deny they have some of the most talented players in their respective positions in college football. Donovan Edwards is coming back. Lots of talented secondary members are coming back there. Michigan is loaded again this season. That'll be one of the better Big Ten teams. And Ohio State, if you think Michigan's loaded, Ohio State is loaded. Getting Caleb Downs and all the returners who could have gone to the NFL coming back, they felt like they had unfinished business. There's no way Indiana's going to go into Columbus and beat the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think that this bad momentum continues here. Look, Ryan Walters' group at Purdue, I think is going to be much better here. And this is a rivalry game. This is not just your traditional home game, final game of the season. No, this is the rivalry game, and I like a lot of the things that Ryan Walters and Purdue are doing. I think there's a lot of solid talent there on this team, and I just think that bad momentum continues for Indiana to end the season. So I have 4-8. Can Indiana be a lot better than that? Absolutely. You can beat UCLA. You can beat Northwestern. You can beat Purdue. And I even think you can beat the Nebraska Cornhuskers at home. Nebraska can struggle in road environments like that. That's why Indiana, for me, is on the lower end of my record range. But this is an Indiana team that, look out, Kurt Cignetti's going to have his struggles, but in a couple of years, Indiana is going to be a really, really good Big Ten program. I have a good feeling about that. I want to know what you guys think in the Hoosiers in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video where we talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks. Goodbye.